So I did my presentation on our great president, Abraham Lincoln. Now, Abraham Lincoln didn't necessarily come from a successful family or a rich family whatsoever. Um, he definitely struggled, and I kind of relate with that, so I decided to choose Abraham as my project. I think Abraham Lincoln is one of the greatest representations of the United States. I don't really think we were completely a country until the Emancipation Proclamation was put into act by him. And I just feel very strongly towards what he did for this country and how he united us as a whole, because we wouldn't be the country we are today without him. Um, so a lot of this has to stem back to his childhood. Uh, Abraham did not come from a place where he was even in contact with a lot of black people. So he didn't have this mentality to like black people, to like them, because everyone around him was hating them. They were treating them as slaves. They were not treating them as citizens. And this was one of the big things that strike people, is that he wasn't actually from a family that disagreed with this. This was just something that wholeheartedly he knew was wrong. But as a child, his family lived on a farm, and he went to school until he was about 15, where most people his age's education around that area would definitely end, and they would not continue. His father was illiterate. His mother was possibly illiterate as well, not very sure. But for him to succeed as much as he did, coming from this tiny town, and they did move a few places, but everywhere they went was very remote. And just him having the ability to do this was incredible to me, because he had all the odds stacked against him, and becoming president was nowhere, I don't think, in his eyes, but once he approached it, I think he amazed himself even. And he had a hatred towards his father. I don't think that it was because the way his dad treated him, but because his dad didn't want him necessarily to go out and do better. He didn't see the reasoning behind school and behind learning. He knew that farming would protect his family, and Abraham always looked down on him for being not as smart and not as successful, and even talking about it sometimes, saying that he wasn't the best man that he could be. And I think that this fueled him definitely to become not just the president, but a better person, and overall accomplish more than his father. And entering into office, we see Abraham not very successful. He was very unsuccessful towards the beginning. His first election to become Illinois state legislator, he did not win. He was, I think, 12th or 11th out of 13 candidates possible, and in his standards and the great leader that he is, it just surprised me that people weren't connecting with him and understanding what he was trying to do more, even in the early ages. I thought he would have still done better. He practiced law while he was doing this. He was able to become a very successful law practitioner, and this kind of built his name for what he was doing. He did never overcharged anyone. He was very honest about his prices, and always was very relatable with everyone he met, and made sure that they knew who he was and that he cared. And I think this was a big part of him getting elected into office 2 years later was because he was very adaptive with people. He would go into their homes and he would tell them or talk to them about things that they needed to talk about farming, about life, about things they needed to solve and how he could help them. He wasn't just being another politician trying to slander people. He was really trying to remember everyone, remember their problems, and remember their names. And this really made him stand out as the true honest Abe. He didn't have a pretty entrance into his campaign. He wasn't very confident about his campaign. The president did a speech when he was a senator about the Mexican War, and people, frankly, were not very happy with him, telling him that he was unpatriotic and that what he was saying was against everything that the country had been built on, and that he basically just needed to shut up. And I think this took a huge toll on him because it was on a national scale for the first time that he was being scrutinized and hated for his beliefs. And this was very much so just the beginning. This kept going on, and as the presidential election arose, the topic of slavery was just increasing drastically. And I don't think anybody expected him to take on, not even him, I don't think he expected to take it on as head on as he did, but becoming president and during the Civil War, he had a lot of losses as the Union failed to really attack at the Confederate. The Confederate were much better at strategy and war and all of the above, that he was losing so many people that the Union and everyone around him started to disbelieve in him. And to the point where he even said that he was at the point where he would hang himself. And he never went on to do anything like this. He always stayed strong, which is one of the main things I love about Abraham. He was a visionary leader, and he always performed with what he was going to do. He always completed his goal, no matter what it took. I think that this is what really set him apart from all of the other great leaders that we've had along the way. He attacked slavery and knew that after the Emancipation Proclamation that he could not give anything else other than freedom and abolishment of slavery. There was not another option. And he knew that that was the only right thing to do, and there would be no other exception unless the Confederate completely won. Now, when the Emancipation Proclamation was put into place, many of the states, they just kept fighting. They got even more upset. I think the South understood that the North was about to gain momentum, and luckily the North was able to win over Atlanta and a few other major battles that were the crucial point in crucial turning point throughout the Emancipation Proclamation, because it wouldn't have succeeded if they hadn't allowed these African Americans to fight. He was initially letting them free themselves, allowing them to free themselves. And I think that just him knowing that he couldn't give them anything else shows the type of leader he truly was. Now, he was definitely the most relational leader that I read about in this class. He always tried to be very open with everyone and give them his opinion completely and wholeheartedly. Sadly, Abraham Lincoln did die on April 15th. He didn't make it much further than the 13th Amendment. And it's extremely sad that it had to end that way, but that's just kind of the way it was.